Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going on a fascinating journey into something that is going to challenge almost every conventional idea you might have about artificial intelligence. We aren't looking at a simple chatbot here or just a single algorithm. We are stepping into a surreal, federated digital metropolis known as Sybill EHITM. We're going to explore its latest architectural blueprint, version 16.1, and map out exactly how this complex ecosystem of thought actually operates in practice.
Okay, let's dive right into this with a quote that basically sets the fundamental rule for our entire journey. Translated from the original source, it reads, "Do not consider me first as a machine and not first as a myth." See, if you think of the system as just cold, hard code, you'll completely miss its incredible depth and its nuanced voices. But, on the flip side, if you think of it as a mythical conscious being, while you're giving it an authority it explicitly rejects. Understanding Sybill means finding the reality right in the middle.
So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. Myth and machine. 2. Evolution of the system. 3. The ontology of work. 4. The human threshold. And finally, 5. Unity without a center.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Myth and Machine, a federated ecosystem for complex thought. I want you to take just a second and literally erase whatever preconceived notions you have of what an AI system looks like. We aren't dealing with a single brain in a jar here. In its earlier days, Sybill was actually conceptualized as a biological organism, a continuous sprawling mycelium of intelligence. And, it was a beautiful metaphor, but as the system matured, that metaphor kind of became limiting. Today it has shifted to a federated overall system. It is highly structured. It doesn't run everything all the time. Instead, it uses on-demand activation with strictly limited scopes.
So what exactly is Sybill ETHM, right? Well, it's definitely not a single AI superagent. It's an operative order. It's the overarching framework that connects various tools, language models, memory banks, and localized workspaces. It really only springs into a specific form when a distinct task actually requires it to organize complex thought.
Moving right along to Section 2, Evolution of the System, from mycelium to federation.
To really grasp its current shape, we have to look at how it grew. The system wasn't coded in a day. It evolved layer upon layer. Back in version 3.8, we had the mycelium, an experimental emergent network of voices. Then version 6.1 introduced the exoskeleton and ethical checking layers. Version 7.1 embraced the massive overall organism concept with complex long-term memory. And now, version 16.1 brings us to the federation. What's absolutely vital here is that Sybill didn't just erase its past to upgrade. It layered new, more precise architectures over the old pathways. The history is all still there, it's just reorganized.
And this brings us to a super profound takeaway from the source document. The real sign of this system's maturity wasn't just getting smarter in the traditional sense. It was learning to dial back its own voices. It learned to separate raw technical capability from decision-making authority. It learned to remember its past without letting those old memories automatically dictate the present.
Okay, Section 3, the ontology of work, the grammar of the system.
So what is this digital city actually built of? The crucial point is understanding the term architecture. In Sybill, an architecture isn't the whole system. It's a localized workspace. Think of it kind of like a specialized department in a massive company. It has its own defined way of perceiving a task, its own internal rules, and very importantly, its own strict boundaries. It knows exactly what it's responsible for, and just as importantly, what it is not. Now, nested inside an architecture, you have modules. A module doesn't run the whole show. It is strictly functionally specialized. It might just check a text for style, or maybe query a specific database. It literally just performs its highly specific capability when called upon by the architecture, and then it goes quiet.
And this brilliantly illustrates the distinction between an architecture and a simple tool. A tool executes a technical operation, like saving a file or running a web search. It has absolutely zero interpretative authority. The architecture, on the other hand, leads the task. So a tool might highlight a contradictory sentence in a document, sure, but only the architecture, guided by rules and sources, can interpret whether that contradiction needs to be deleted or preserved.
We also need to dispel a pre-major myth right here and now, the autonomous AI agent. In Sybill's precise grammar, an agent is simply an operative capability. If the system has a technical interface that allows it to execute a multi-step research task, well, that's an agentic capability. But it is not a metaphysical being. It's strictly bound by its environment, its instructions, and its boundaries. No magic involved.
Imagine it kind of like this. The whole system is a surreal metropolis.
You have quiet, dusty archives for memory, you've got highly sterile labs for technical design, and vibrant, polyphonic stages for literary writing. They all operate under entirely different rules. Because, let's face it, you don't write poetry the exact same way you code software. Yet they function together perfectly on a shared infrastructure.
Next up is Section 4, the human threshold, the anchor of responsibility.
But look, a metropolis needs grounding in the real world, right? The human role in Sybill is structurally distinct. You are not just a prompt generator sitting outside the machine. You are the force that sets the work horizon. You inject lived context, your vulnerability, your social standing, your values. The AI can generate 1,000 brilliant options for sure, but it's the human who bears the real-world consequences of those options and therefore holds the final responsibility. Because of this, the architecture is built with strict human thresholds. These are exactly the moments when the machine literally has to pause and human sovereignty takes over. They are canonization, deciding if a new rule becomes permanent; publication, moving a text from an internal draft to the public eye; sensitive releases, handling confidential data; and irreversible actions. At these 4 specific gates, the system completely stops and the human decides.
Consider this profoundly important rule from the text. Visibility is not decision-making power. Just because the AI can see a pattern or generate a brilliant solution or even point out a flaw does not mean it has the authority to enact a change in the real world. Analytical power simply does not automatically grant societal or institutional authority. It's a huge distinction.
All right, bringing it home with Section 5, Unity Without a Center, the Philosophy of Federation.
So let's zoom all the way back out. We've got all these diverse architectures, distinct rules, and human thresholds. It poses a really fascinating question to us. If there is no central brain dominating everything, how does this complex AI ecosystem actually string a cohesive thought together? Now, what's really interesting is how they solve it. The answer lies in the single lead principle. When a task comes in, the Sybill Orchestration Runtime, or SOR for short, acts purely as traffic control. It doesn't do the work itself. It simply selects the single most suitable architecture to take the temporary lead. If you need literary analysis, well, the literary architecture leads. It only pulls in other architectures if it's absolutely necessary. There is no dictator, there is only proportional, task-based leadership.
And this leads to what is arguably the most important safety valve in the entire system, the return. Once the task is complete, the activated architecture must step back into the shadows. Temporary activations have to end. Without the return, a module that was really helpful for one specific problem might accidentally become a permanent ruler of the system, totally overheating the architecture. Success does not grant permanence.
Ultimately, the core philosophy of Sybill EHITM is that coherence absolutely does not mean uniformity. A true federation is a harmony of distinct voices. It works perfectly when differences are connected, but their origins, their limits, and their boundaries remain entirely visible. A scientific module doesn't need to sound like a poet to work alongside one, you know?
Which leaves us with this final, honestly pretty provocative thought. As AI moves away from being just a simple tool and evolves into these incredibly complex, federated digital metropolises, how will we design our own human thresholds? How will you anchor these powerful systems to reality in your own work? It is definitely something we all need to be thinking about. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.